Hi, folks, and welcome to Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes the way. I'm your host, David Susan. Today on Inside the Leader's Mind, we're looking at AI through the eyes of someone who spent his entire career figuring out how to truly engage people. My guest, Howard Rosen, is the CEO and principal of Nova Insights, a firm that helps healthcare organizations use AI agents and digital tools so clinicians can spend less time on administration and more time with patients. He has more than 30 years of experience founding and leading companies in both healthcare and entertainment, advising Fortune 500 organizations on digital product strategy, innovation, and customer experience. Howard created a patented communication technologies such as LifeWire platform and Whisper Text. He's been invited to share his expertise on the U.S. Capitol Hill Steering Committee on Telehealth. He has been chosen by the Canadian government to mentor other health IT innovators. And before all of that, he spent 2 decades producing film and television. What? From kids' shows and drama to live events. Now he takes that background in storytelling and engagement and he applies it to AI and health IT, helping leaders innovate without losing the human side of care. Howard, I'm excited to dig into how leaders can move from fear to possibility with AI. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. And what an insanely good introduction. But now I can tell people what I do. But
There you
does
go.
explain what does explain what happened to my hair. So that's great.
Oh, that's for another podcast, right? That we could
Exactly. Yeah.
anyway. But for listeners who just heard that intro, and they're thinking, wait a minute, what does a film and TV producer, or how does a TV and film producer end up in health and IT and AI? So how do you tell the story of that career pivot?
Well, there is a long version. I'll try for the shorter one. Ostensibly, I'm a bit of a restless soul, as you may have gathered just from that wonderful introduction. And really, it's always an ongoing curiosity. So in terms of film and television business that I was involved in, as you suggested, I expanded the area into education and training. So I was doing continuing medical education pieces. And one of the pieces I did working with GlaxoSmithKline was on type 2 diabetes. And this is now key important is 2005. And I was learning how pervasive it was as part of this and how pervasive it was going to be. So being a father of 4 young kids at the time, I said, okay, who's in charge? What's going on? Who's preventing all this? What's happening? They had, lots of cool solutions that nobody was using, about 18% utilization for type 2. And I kind of went, well, all you got to do, is come up with a solution that ties to people's diabetes. And being a card-carrying arrogant producer, I had every answer to every problem. So I said, I got the solution. Took me about 10 minutes. Diabetes is solved. I don't know what else. What am I going to do the rest of the day? Done.
Billionaire. There you go.
Exactly. Done. So 6 months later, I was working with Universal McCann. This is going to create a bifurcation of your audience. With a new cell phone called the StarTAC Motorola, the first clamshell cell phone.
Right.
I was involved in the promotional campaigns for that. And again, 2005, talking to the engineers as they're building the program, they were saying, sometime in the future, there's going to be programs on this phone. And we're going, we don't have a program. The phone's a phone. Who's going to want programs? Which shows how smart I really am.
Right.
But that went on that day. And later that evening, and it was very late. I was very tired. And maybe it was my 3rd glass of Pinot Grigio. I went, maybe these cell phones are going to be that device to engage people to manage diseases. And that really just led to me this curiosity odyssey that led, weirdly enough, to actually holding 9 patents on the idea.
That's crazy.
And built this whole business around communication, which has evolved into the work I do in AI.
That's crazy. All right. Now you said at its core, you've said this to me, that at its core, you're doing basically the same work that you did in entertainment, just a different medium.
Yes,
what is that through line between producing shows and building AI-driven healthcare solutions, communication solutions, whatever it might be?
Well, further to deeper than that, it's storytelling. You're telling a story. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? Is it 120 minutes? Or is it just a string of 128 bits about how I'm feeling today, or how I'm doing, or information, data that's converted to information flow? And what's important to that, it's just not the flow of information, is what data are you getting become information. So how do you extract that, to be technical about it? You need to engage the individuals. Yes, you'll get information off of devices and off of your watch or whatever the case may be, but that's data. To get information, you need insights from the individual. And to do that, you have to ask them and interact with them in one form or another to get information from them on how they're doing, because each individual is different. So my data coming from my watch may be the same for 10 people, but when you go deeper and ask information about them, you're creating a unique fingerprint almost of that individual. So what I've always been trying to do is to create those fingerprints of data and information of people by communicating with them and engaging them with all the various tools and technology as it innovates, to do so on a more efficient and effective basis.
Okay, so just for the audience and for me, for the audience understanding, going, well, what the heck is this solution? Could you elaborate just a little bit more to give me context so I can put it in my brain?
So,
Like what is it you, in a kind of getting at a grasp, but what is it you were actually doing?
so for example, in terms of dealing with an area we deal with is 30-day readmissions. People are discharged from a hospital or clinic, and what one of the biggest issues, how do you ensure they're not going back to the clinic or the hospital within the 30-day period? So to do so, you need to communicate with the patient to see how they're doing when they're outside of the clinic or the hospital. So you tie in the communication approach I've created to engage people to respond in a variety of ways. But once you have that information from them, what does that mean? And you need to take the protocols and the way the clinicians look at that information, put them together to say, if you take these 5 data points, let's say, does that mean they're doing worse? They're doing better? They're doing fine? I should reach out. They should reach in. They should have more tests, whatever the case may be. But automating all those processes so the clinician is on the phone all the time, or they're on the computer all the time. They're actually managing their patients. All the while you have this other communication, this other means communicating with all their other patients. So simultaneously they're managing patients. They're dealing with the patient on the human basis when they need to, and electronic basis when they don't need to.
So we're not just, so make sure I understand this. We're not just talking about like I said, the data that's read off watch or
No.
technology, like bits and bytes. It's asking questions or getting their feedback, whether
Yeah.
it's multiple
How do you,
choice or
yeah, it could be
actually
multiple choice.
written.
It could be a variety, depending on the protocols. So it could be, how do you feel today? And let's say it's a
Got it.
5-point scale, and
Got
you
it.
give 5, meaning you're feeling fine. That's great. If you respond with a 2, meaning you're feeling lousy, or you just say you're feeling lousy, it may come back and ask you some more questions to see how you're doing, what's going on, and using all these AI tools to look at their record, to see how they're doing, to know what questions to follow up with, to see how they're doing.
Got it. And I think you had told me, if I recall early conversation, that there was a moment early on when someone said that your idea helped save a life. Did I
Yeah,
remember that?
no,
How did
you actually, very, very good memory.
how did
That was,
Tell me about
so
that? Well, hey, real quick, tell me about that. But then how that possibly changed your sense of purpose, and maybe the way you make decisions as a leader.
it was dramatic. So at that point, we had this early idea, and I started did some research, and sort of said, okay, I'm going to see what I can build in this healthcare thing while I still run the film business. And so I had the two kind of going simultaneously. Like 80% of my time was on the film, but 20% of the time was just this idea. And we got to pilot to work with a group actually at a NGO out of California in the Napa Valley, working with veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And we're working with them. And as a very early days in all this. And literally one night, I get a call from the executive director from the facility and say, Howard, just to let you know, you helped save a life tonight. And as I think I described to you, I then spent the next 30 odd minutes yelling and swearing at him at the top of my lungs. Every word you can imagine. I made up a few new ones, and he kept on trying to say very nicely, I don't understand. Isn't this a good thing? And I said, no, it's beyond a good thing. I had this idea. I thought this could be a business good, perhaps as a social good, but I didn't think anything like it could help save someone else's life. If it's got that much power, I can't sleep nights if I'm not trying to see maybe I could help someone else out. And that was the change where I had to have this, sat down with the family and went, yeah, there's a bit of a change going on here. I've got to pursue this.
Was
And so
that
as a leader, it was a complete abrupt change of everything.
was that not what you expected or wanted?
I could not, as I said, I just thought this was, it's a good idea. This could, have some value in terms of helping people, but never to that level where it can contribute with other things to help save someone's life in that particular case.
How long
And
ago was this? Oh,
the
sorry.
story got, but in fact, this particular event got so far, it was actually presented to a congressional committee on Capitol Hill in Washington 6 months later. And
What?
it's actually in the congressional record
What?
to show how insane,
What?
how wonderful but insane this thing went.
How long ago was this?
That would have been 2008, thereabouts.
So does this have now your solution, what you do? Does the business have legs now where it's actually having an impact on clinicians, patients, et cetera?
It's that which of the communication side had dramatic impact, and particularly working in the federal space. So working with the Veterans Administration, doing work with the DOD, working with Health and Human Services and various states in terms of on the communication side. Where I am now with AI is an evolution of where it was then to doing it now with using artificial intelligence or intelligent automation is the other side. And we developed this a lot in Europe. So we've got about 5-6 years worth of European experience, and I've just brought it to North America.
And by using AI agents, what is the impact or benefit to, let's say, clinicians right now? How is it
Oh,
benefiting them? Not only saving a life potentially, but are there
on the
other hard numbers about, time
yes,
or things like that?
on the hard side of it is just dealing with the fact that it's interesting with all the technology and everything that's developed over the past 20 odd years. If you look at the time period I've been in healthcare, health space, we've got more tools, we've got the watches, we've got every devices. So what's happened is we now have a fire hose of data coming in to people. Before it's just how do you feel? Now it's a fire hose of data, information coming from it, or data coming in from everywhere that the clinicians have to get through. And similarly, they've got health systems and health, CRMs, all sorts of things they've got to manage. So now they're actually spending on average 40% of their time dealing with administrative stuff
Oh, wow.
and not even dealing with the patient. So really the business proposition is very simply, let's automate that 40% for the clinician and allow them to actually go back to managing patients. So we're so depending on the utilization, we have 18 different utilizations or agents right now. We're automating between 96 and 99% of that administrative side, saving on average the clinician about an hour a day. There's
That's
much more deeper stuff, but that's essentially what we've
I
been
mean,
doing.
that's huge if you look at however long, they're working a shift or whatever. The irony, I got to say, the funniest irony there is how it's added to their plate. Technology has actually added to their plate more work, not taken it
Absolutely.
off. And there's
Yep.
always that promise of, oh, technology, get technology. And I'm seeing this in so many organizations. There's so many tools. We're actually less effective in a way
Exactly.
because we get
Exactly.
we go off squirrel. So let me ask you, when you propose this, because not everyone's buying it, I'm sure, right? This is just the way the world is. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
When you propose something like this, right, a solution, what are leaders most excited about, and what scares them the most as they hear what you bring to the table?
It's an excellent question. It's what we do is in terms of sales and sales leadership is you find the pain point of the group you're talking to, the client you're talking to. So you address their pain point. Ask them their pain point and show how you can address that piece. So that, very, simplifying a very complex processes, but really it's what are your various pain points that your client is dealing with and how you can address the pain points. So that's the good part. They go, oh, that's great. You can do this. You can do this. You've got success when they come up with their own ideas on how your technology could be used. The other side is, and this happens a lot, is you get them excited. They're all jazzed. They're all there. Then they're about to sign on the dotted line. They go, but if we're dealing with automated systems, what's our governance on that? And they sort of get the concern is, okay, how do we manage all this? How do we deal with the data security? How are we dealing with all the various pieces? And do we even have policies, procedures, or guidelines within our system to manage this whole new way of operating? Even though all it really does is taking existing workflows and automating them all.
And is this at the operational level, the people that do it, or are we talking senior executive C-level? Typically, what are you seeing?
It could be a little bit of both. It depends it depends on the size of the organization as to where they look at it, as where this becomes a problem. Now, we address those issues. We've done it multiple times.
Sure.
But it's one of those things where at some point it gets past the excitement of something, quite honestly, something shiny and new, and this is really helping us something, and they go, oh, but how does this affect everything? How do we deal with and particularly in healthcare, privacy and security and personal health information, or whatever the case may be?
How much of resistance and fear is the two letters A and I, right? AI, like obviously change in anything, right? Someone's going to a new, Epic, or they're going to a new, like ERP, MRP, CRM, whatever in the healthcare world, right? Medical records, EMRs, but and there's obviously fear of change there, and how is it going to, right? But now we're talking AI. What are you seeing now from, let's talk executives and other leaders, about fears of AI, or just in general?
Well, I'll try not to be on my high horse for this one, but the reality is there's no such thing as AI. It's a great branding term, but artificial intelligence doesn't exist. It's algorithms. It's a mathematical calculation of existing data. And the way AI exists and ChatGPT and all that, they're accessing information of what's already happened, looking at the probabilities of, this is the question, here's the highest probability for this answer, what's already occurred. It really doesn't exist as people think it does in terms of artificial intelligence. It's this brand new intelligence, this insight and everything else. So it's getting past the understanding of what AI truly is. So it's a huge fear. It's a huge fear because what are they going to tell me? What information is going to get? Where's the information coming from? Is there hallucinations? Is it real information? Is it real insights, or is it just making it up? And so it is the fear of the unknown, of not realizing they don't know what it is. And so part of our leadership and how we lead our sales group is to build in trust and transparency from top to bottom. You don't have trust until you have transparency. So they actually see exactly how the sausage is made and are part of that process. So they know where the information is coming from. They know how it's calculating or doing the analysis of what's occurred to address those pieces. Because unless you deal with that side, you're not going to get utilization, because it's even fine to build it. But unless the clinicians are using it, you're not going to go anywhere.
So how is that being received right now? Are they buying into it from the standpoint of that? I'll call it an objection. The potential fear of AI, right?
Yeah.
Uh, are they buying it, or are they still like, no? I'm even though I see how the sausage is made, I'm still reluctant because it's going to take over.
No, once they see how the sausage is made and realize it's not going to take over, there's actually a huge relief, and there's a much more powerful buy-in, actually. Yeah. And so then you get the champions within organizations saying, no, this works. This is good. We were involved in the process of building it.
That's cool.
And
that's cool.
And that's the way to do it. And it's inclusiveness of all the stakeholders.
Yeah.
A lot of solutions. This is what I learned years ago with my first solutions. Is, the technology side, if you build it, they will come. You build something, throw it against the wall and say, okay, just go use it. No one was using it because they go, well, what is it? So we've always taken the approach, we call it humanizing digital transformation, is involve absolutely every stakeholder in the process to make sure they get out of what they need to get out and they actually see how it's built. So they know where the information is coming from.
That's super important that people understand that, because there's so much fear around technology in general. People
Yeah,
go, no, they're not.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been in
Oh,
the
they
tech
are.
industry for years. People don't want change. That's what
No,
it comes down
no,
to. They're not afraid of
exactly.
technology. They're afraid of change. And
Yeah.
now we have this huge thing, right, with the unknown of AI, and people think they know what it is. It's so funny the way you described it, and don't take this the wrong way, but I talked to so many executives and CEOs, and you're the first one that are said, "Hey, AI is not AI," or whatever you phrased it,
Yeah.
and you're coming from the film and that world, which is kind of fun. You're not a computer science guy, right?
No, I'm farthest from that.
That's
Yes.
so fun. That's funny to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. No,
Hey,
definitely the farthest from that area.
in earlier discussion, we talked a little bit about innovation, and if I recall, you said something to the effect of 80% of innovation comes from outside the industry, or impacted with new employees or something like that. How has that played in your own work? And then second part of that is, what should leaders do with that kind of insight?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct in terms of it's 80% of innovation in any industry comes from outside that industry. And I do that by actually involving people in the organization, either at the operations level, sometimes the sales level, certainly at the board level or advisory level, or people from outside the industry to bring their thoughts and insights and bring it to the group. We joke that when we get together, 10 people, 20 opinions, but
It's true.
it but the value proposition is, and yes, as a leader, so I'm dealing with all these type A's or double A's or whatever, but the value proposition is getting all these insights because you don't know what the trigger point is for those insights and what's going to create this new idea. Using that simple example, of when I did the diabetes project and the flip phone and put together a new technology. I quite honestly, that's a recipe I've always followed for years before and continue to do so, because you don't know where the insight's going to come from. You don't know what's just sitting there waiting to come out that needs to be coaxed in some way. If we have time, I got a very quick example
All right, go for it.
about the invention of the telephone. Everyone knows Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone.
Right.
But the problem is he had been spending years trying to do that and couldn't figure out how to do it, how to get that last piece to get the phone to work. And then one day he read research papers, and he read this research paper out of Germany that talked about how this fellow invented how the telephone would work. And he was just really upset. He's upset, but just, okay, someone figured it out. Why didn't I think of that? Because, of course, this is all you do. You got to do this, this, and this. Voila, you have a telephone. So he wrote him, congratulating him on discovering how the telephone worked. And this was a German paper. And the guy wrote back going, "What are you talking about? You misread my paper. I mistranslated it."
What?
But in his mistranslation, it triggered in his own mind that piece he needed
That
to
solution.
figure that solution. And I just thought that was so analogous to the value proposition of bringing in disparate ideas and different perspectives into a business. So when you're going forward, you're not just going same old, same old. You have this new perspective. As a leader, your job is to be able to take this variety of information, this other fire hose of information coming at you, and to discern it to lead the strategy forward. But it's so important to have those disparate ideas and perspectives, because you just never know what's happening elsewhere
Right.
that you can
Right.
use here.
Right.
Like in terms of healthcare, in terms of security and privacy, very analogous to the financial business. So we took a lot of tools from the financial industry in terms of how we dealt with security and privacy.
That's brilliant. And it's really smart being able to pull from other areas. Now, you and I talked about new hires, and that new hires oftentimes see what's broken right away,
Yeah.
but then they eventually get shot
Yes.
down and eventually they fall in line. Why do you think organizations waste that perspective from new people?
Well, it's a valid. I don't know if it's waste. It's you've got new people coming in. They don't know your business or how
But they
you're
think
doing
they
your
do.
business.
They see things though.
No, that's just it. So from the corporate perspective, they're looking at this person. Well, they don't know how we operate. We will train them to think our way. But to the point in the discussion that we had, the reality is they have a unique value for 2 weeks, maybe three, of coming in, knowing maybe they may know some people, but they don't know the ins and outs of your operation. They have a unique perspective to go, why do you do that? They've got the ability to say why. Because after that time, very few people ask why in an organization. It's just driving. The new person will ask why because they don't know any better. And the key thing is to encourage that why in that period of time to be able to then be able to use that to go, okay, because usually they ask you why, well, you don't understand. No, they actually do understand. You don't understand that what you're doing. Maybe there should be another way or there's something with it
Yeah.
that you should review.
But it is true, fresh set of eyes see things differently. I actually always
Absolutely.
thought it was 1 year, not a few weeks. But I it's so funny. Quick analogy here. My kids said to us one day, we kind of reorganized the kitchen where we put bowl or how we had poles. And when the kids got older and they're making their own food and stuff, they're like, "Why is it here? Why do you have cups over here and plates here?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense." And so my wife and I went on vacation one weekend. We come back and they redid the whole kitchen for us because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
saw it in a different way. Well, our
Yeah.
excuse was, I don't know, when we moved in, that's where we put it and we never touched
Exactly.
it. But
Yeah.
we got used to it. And I think
Exactly.
the story there is that as leaders bring on new people, some of the better leaders, they not only outside the industry, right? The
Yeah.
Alexander Graham Bell example and what you've done, but take advantage of that, those young, new, maybe not young, but new employees
Yeah.
and be open and not shooting them down saying, well, you don't know, you
Yeah.
haven't been
You don't
here.
understand. Yeah, you don't
But
understand. Yeah.
one of my favorite phrases that I'll share here is, the best leaders I know, and I talk about this in my keynote, is just leaders asking, how could we?
Yeah.
How could we take that idea that how could we do it differently? Why can't we? Right? And
Yeah.
they have more possibility thinking versus the excuse thinking. So it's
Yeah. No,
fascinating.
absolutely. It's funny because I'm putting together a new keynote, which is there's no why in AI. Because you go AI, it's just doing, but where's that whole questioning part? So to earlier question, using artificial intelligence or that process doesn't allow for asking, stopping and saying why. And to the discussion, that's probably the most important part of business and business leadership is being able to stop, take a breath and go, why is that happening? Why do you do it that way? Why are we?
Well, that
Because
and that might lead into maybe you kind of answered the question I was thinking here is especially around AI for leaders who are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast right now that are overwhelmed by AI and they don't know where to start.
yeah.
What is the most practical first step that they can take right at the beginning of the next year here?
If you've not done it before, it's funny. In early technologies, people like that, or in the early internet, or I remember the biggest comment people had. I hear in AI as well. They're afraid to go on because they're afraid to break it. And you go, and it's not even. It's as base as not understanding. There's nothing to break.
Right.
I understand why they're saying that, but it's because it's so different to me. And I've done this with my parents. I've done this with everybody who've asked me that question is just go on, go to Gemini, use Copilot, do ChatGPT, just ask it a simple question and see what happens. Don't be afraid of it. Don't ask them about business. Just ask how's the weather in Calgary or how's the weather in Tucson or just ask it a question and just get in time and ask it one question a day. Force yourself to do that and see what happens. And then it's just one of those things when you go, oh, it's that simple. It's just, maybe a search engine or whatever the case, realizing of what's happening. What I've been so fascinated by all this is everyone's concerned about AI, but no one had a concern about this going on Google 15 years ago, asking it, I've got a headache, what should happen? And Google, and Dr. Google, people just took, 90% of people took the first three answers as saying that must be it.
Yeah.
And that was just created by Google. It's like, well, this is no different. It's just larger databases, but it's the exact same thing. But that was no problem at all. But this is what's scaring everybody.
That's true. That is true. I want to ask you a couple last questions here about just leading a team, because as I understand, you've got people all over the country,
Yeah,
all over the world, right? On your
yeah,
team.
yeah, yeah.
How do you manage being able to motivate, inspire, um, engage, have loyalty with people that are not in the same building, same office?
Uh, I don't know if I've evolved over that, but when I first started out 20 odd years ago, it was income. It was, hard. It was brick and mortar. And then we evolved into fully virtual at one point and went, oh, this is the way to go. Because of course, what's happening at that moment is the way to go until the next moment. Went, well, maybe that wasn't the way to go. And I've sort of gone to where hybrid actually is the answer ultimately for all these things. But when you're dealing with, across North America and some in Europe, you can't quite do that way. So when you're not in person, what we try to do, and I try to do is, I lead some of the social media side. So do postings and then get everyone to respond to the posts, which does twofold. One, obviously it gets the post out there, it gets it reposted. But the other thing is it gets them engaged in various discussions. And some are very serious and some are a little bit more fun, but it gets to sort of that public forum seems to be something that really motivates everybody and the competition of who gets more likes or whatever the case may be on what they're doing. Um, and similarly, a lot of sharing as to what our experiences are because it's still brand new in this whole area. It's very exciting. So everyone's very excited about what worked for you here and what worked for you there, or this kind of client or that kind of client. And so you have a lot of internal discussion that goes on. Like everyone else, we have, regular weekly meetings of just everyone getting together. And then we have subgroups getting together to try to do different things in different projects. But
Cool.
it isn't easy. It can be difficult at times, and that motivation goes high and gets low. Obviously, when things are chugging along, it's much higher. When things are a little slower, you have to really push harder. And it's trying to use all the various tools that are out there to try to keep the motivation.
It can be challenging. What do you think your greatest leadership strength is?
Not knowing any better, just trying different
Ignorance is
things. And
bliss.
and believe me, just ask my kids. Dad's right up there on the ignorant side. Um, I think it's not being afraid to try different things and trying to think that there's always something, a new way, better ways of doing things,
It's cool. What
and
about an
being
air?
open
Sorry,
and
go
being
ahead.
open to and just being open to suggestions. Like
And then
there's
what's
not a
an
bad
area
opinion.
an area in leadership that you want to get even better at as it relates to leading to people, teams, etc.?
Having said all that, I still think I can be a better listener.
I'm sorry, what? I'm just
Having
kidding.
said, yeah, but it's just exactly in terms of, because there's a lot that's happened, but I still think I could be better at it.
Yeah.
Because like anyone else, I get fixated on an idea and I really want to chug forward. And so, okay, let's marshal the forces. And even though I get all this various input, I think I could still be better at it. I hope I can be better at it.
Hopefully. I'm sure you can. All right, two last questions. Uh, name of the podcast is Inside the Leader's Mind. What's in the way becomes the way. What is something, an obstacle that you came across at some point in your career, and that actually became the reason and the way you are today? So, what's in the way became the way. Whether you went around
Um,
it, you went through it, you learned from it.
I think what was in the way was the career path. By education, I was educated as an MBA. Well, what the heck am I doing producing film? And then from there, who the hell are you in health IT innovation? So I think part of that was what got in the way, and I let it get in the way,
Mm.
as opposed to, and what I've learned is sort of a leadership lesson, is if there's a obstacle or challenge, lean into that. Actually, make that challenge the raison d'etre. And I learned, as a film producer, of what the hell am I doing in as health IT and health technology and sort of this side of things. And I leaned into it when it dawned on me that my background actually was a huge advantage in terms of engagement. Is my job being to engage people? That was my job. And realizing I'm still doing that, to our earlier discussion, and to lean into that. And then the arrogance was, okay, I'm an arrogant producer again. Nobody knows engagement better than a film producer. And so I know much better than these tech heads about, how to create engaging product and use focus groups. Like, I use a lot of tools from film production in building these things. To our point, involving stakeholders, that's focus groups.
It's cool.
I
That's
did
cool.
that my entire career.
So I'm going to share this for our listeners. What Howard just said is a common comment that I've heard from many CEOs and leaders, meaning it's not this perfect straight path that most of them, everyone thinks, oh, it's just this perfect path that someone was on to become where they are. So
Yeah,
many people have said the same thing. It's like, oh, my career went left and right and up and down and left and right. And it's like, and it was just the perseverance, and it was looking at where they were and saying, how can I apply this to what I'm doing now? And it is,
exactly.
I just had another guest on, and they said almost the exact same thing, Howard. So really great words of wisdom. More great
Oh,
words of
thank you.
wisdom.
It's in it, and the reality is not, it's not the words, obviously others, but that's what happened in terms of or it's like, oh, I found myself here. I don't know how I found myself here. How do I move forward?
Good.
Sometimes fear is an amazing motivator in terms of coming up with that solution, going, oh, okay, I got to get from here to there, or out of here. How to get out of here?
It's continuing forward, not
Yes.
quitting. And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest key, is
Yeah.
not saying, woe is me, I can't
No,
because,
never, never do
why
that.
would how could a film producer be? Instead, it's how can I, right? It's looking at that. All right, last question to wrap up today. Um, when I was a kid, my aunts and uncles would say, David, how's school? What do you want to be when you grow up? And it would be the same questions over and over. I'm like, oh my gosh, why don't you ask me this? Well, they don't know to
Yeah.
ask me this. And then my kids are, I ask them questions. Dad, you're nosy. And then in another breath, it's like, you don't know anything about me. So, okay, great.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
question should I be
you
asking
got the
you?
same kids.
Yeah, exactly. So the question I have for you comes from that. It's like, what's the question you wish people would ask you, but they don't know to ask you? But secretly, you're kind of like, I wish people would ask me this.
I guess the one question on that, and just because it deals with what I deal with right now, is is AI the answer to everything?
Mm.
And the answer is no. In fact, there's numerous times you don't need to have that extra analytical tool to solve your problem. I mentioned earlier intelligent automation. There's in a lot of cases, you just have to go with this automation process, and you don't need that AI layer to complicate it. And in fact, that may be the better solution. We don't make, obviously it's a less expensive solution. It's a much quicker time frame. It's not as sexy, but actually gets you what you need faster and for less money.
Does
And
this answer also tie into there's no why in AI,
absolutely.
right? It's asking the why. It's the thought. It's the putting
Yeah.
the effort
Why?
in. And yeah,
It goes back to, again, but from the film days. Sometimes I go and I did commercial work as well. And sometimes I go into a client, and I may not know very much about the client. The only thing I knew was whatever they told me they needed, I knew would be the last thing they needed,
mm,
because they were just giving me the buzzword, or someone said, we need X. And I just knew 99% of the time X was the symptom, wasn't the problem.
that's good
And
stuff.
so similarly with this, in terms of, yes, you got a problem, but the answer may not be this. It may be this. Let's find out what the problem is. And fundamentally, it goes. We spend a lot of time. We actually have a whole consultancy built around it. Is actually working with clients to find out their problem first. Then we
Imagine
have the
that.
technology solution. But it's exactly, and that's why you have a lot of technology gets a bad rap, because they're throwing technology on something that's not a problem, not the real problem. They're throwing on the
Just a
symptom.
symptom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Howard, thank you so much for being with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I so appreciate
Yeah.
it. If someone would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to learn about your company or what you do, et cetera?
The company, the address is www.novapix.com. Carry over from my old film business. My email is just hrosen@novapix.com, or on LinkedIn, it's just Howard Rosen 129. And you can grab me. I'd love to chat with, I always, as you can gather, I don't mind chatting and love chatting with everybody.
And folks, I'll put that in the show notes if you didn't catch it, so you'll be able to find it. But Howard, thank you again for being with me. It has been an absolute pleasure having you.
Well, thank you so much, David. This was a lot of fun.
Folks, this is Inside the Leader's Mind. I'm David Susan. If you've enjoyed this, please share. Please let other people know about it. We'd love your feedback, your comments, and please subscribe. But that's it for now, folks. Thank you again. And Howard, till next time.
Thanks so much.